we provide a lot of information about packaging, basically. Different trends, what's coming up, changes, how do you manage now with all the shifts due to COVID-19. So a lot of info about packaging, essentially, anything to do with packaging. We have several brands there: Packaging World, Automation World, Healthcare Packaging, OEM, and Pro Food World. If you're ever curious about packaging, it actually can be quite interesting. So actually, I include anything about Drupal on here, which maybe I should. I started working with Drupal as kind of a content editor, content cleanup at my college when they were moving into Drupal 6, then kind of moved into Site Builder, got into some custom module, and then a little bit of theming. Worked up. Now at PMMI Media Group, I actually rarely work with Drupal now, which is funny. I get to do like the fun stuff and oversee new architectures and discuss possibilities and decide with the other developers what approach we want to take, and then others do the in the trench work. I spend most of the rest of my time working with some custom web applications. We're one of the companies that has lots of data on you that people don't like, that we provide to other companies, but all in the nature of helping out companies. And we use the Yi framework and Symfony framework for some of our new stuff. So without further ado, I'll get a little bit more into what are my qualifications. So I actually should split these maybe. I'm not an expert in these, but I have attended quite a few workshops and sessions on ACT, which is Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, and Mindfulness. A lot of big words in there. But I learn about and work with a therapist on these skills, practice them in everyday life too. And obviously I'm a programmer, so I know about that. But again, as I said, I don't know if anyone can ever be an expert in anything, especially maybe programming. So going on, like I said, I'm not a medical professional. So just keep that in mind. This is a lot of personal experience, personal learning, things I've discovered on my own or through the help of others without any official training per se. So let's then get into mindfulness. Thought I'd start out with what mindfulness is not. I found this great article from Ian Anderson on mindfulness and programming, and he has this amazing quote that mindfulness is not magical, mythical, restricted to a single spiritual or religious tradition, or an aggressive pushing away of our unwanted emotional states. Mindfulness is not meditation, though I often say meditation can be mindfulness. As Ian kind of got at, it's not about eliminating your difficult thoughts and feelings. It's not about controlling your thoughts and feelings or trying to change who you are. One thing you'll notice here is it's not a ton about control. It's not a waste of time. I've heard that from some. I'm guessing since you're here, you're probably of the mindset that it's not a waste of time. It's also not a magic pill. It won't get rid of all your problems. Life won't all of a sudden be great and easy, happy, you know, unicorns and fairy dust. It takes work. So getting a little into what mindfulness actually is, it's being completely in and accepting the present without judgment, attachment, or invalidation. As I kind of mentioned, it's part of dialectical behavioral therapy, which is an evidence-based psychotherapy developed by Dr. Marsha Linehan, and its goal is to provide skills to live a better life. There's a lot of skill sets with it, a lot of good things in there, which I think actually everyone could find useful in life. And as I said, mindfulness is difficult. It's not easy, it takes practice. One of the ways I like to describe mindfulness is as the art of being. So what are some of the benefits of mindfulness? Mindfulness can be really helpful in emotion regulation. You have reduce anxiety, reduce depressive symptoms, reduce stress, more positive feelings, and fewer negative feelings. One of the really cool things is it actually overall can improve your well-being, including physical health and mental health. There have actually been medical studies, one of them by Harvard, which I will provide the link to at a later date. But it showed that, there are people who practice mindfulness had very tangible, very evident positive effects, some including lower pressure, less likely for heart attacks. They found it very helpful in treating depression, OCD, different things like that. So it's not just kind of this magical feel good out in the air. Mindfulness can help decrease your reactivity and increase your response flexibility. So one way I like to think of this, it helps you deal with your fight or flight nature. Something may come up, conflict, especially now. Maybe we're tired, maybe we're stressed, we're a little short. Our instant reaction might be to either fight, to kind of get confrontational, or to avoid a problem, to run away. So mindfulness can help you with that, controlling that reaction and help you be more open to how you respond. It actually can increase your working memory, not to be confused with increasing the memory on a computer system. It can increase your focus. Part of this is that you're less affected by distracting stimuli. You're able to ignore distractions more and push those distractions away. And that kind of leads into increased productivity. And all of these kind of, as you're a happier person, as you're more productive, maybe as you have less confrontations with your coworkers, you're more flexible in how you work with everyone. This can increase your job satisfaction. So I'll get into a little bit dialectical behavioral therapy. I might run through this kind of fast and we can go back if you want. It's a lot of big words, a lot of different things, but it can be broken down into 3 different components. You have the what skills, the how skills, and the wise mind. So let's go a little bit into the what skills to start. In the what skills, there are 3 components. There is observe, there is describe, and there is participate. Breaking these down a little further, let's go into what observe is. Observing means paying attention on purpose. You are very intentionally looking at something. You're doing it non-judgmentally. You're not saying, I shouldn't be doing it this way. You're not saying, I responded poorly. You're not responding, that was something really stupid to do or to say. And a lot of it too is a good way to look at it is a Teflon mind. You're letting your feelings, thoughts, and experiences pass without sticking. So you're saying, oh, hey, I'm angry. Let it just go by. Oh, I'm sad. Let it go by. That employee, that coworker really made me mad. Kind of notice it, take it, and let it move on. Describe gets into a little more building on what you're observing. So you're putting your words on observations. So maybe that coworker made me angry because they glared at me, because they said something I didn't like, because they criticized my approach to a problem. But you are doing this non-judgmentally. Another good way to think about describing is to use your 5 senses and go through that. The second part of the what skills is participate. What does this mean? This means fully entering into the experience. You are focusing on what you are doing at that time. If you are talking to someone, say you're focused on your conversation. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next, what you have to do that night, or maybe next day. You're focused on what they're saying, really listening and engaged. And you're doing it non-judgmentally. So between those, does anyone notice a commonality? This is a bit hard to do here in Zoom, but maybe if you want to turn on video quick, unmute yourself.
You're saying non-judgmentally a lot.
Yes, so that is one of the big keys in here. You're doing it non-judgmentally, which can be very, very hard to do. It's something that takes practice. So going into the house skills, again, this non-judgmentally thing comes up. You're doing it mindfully and you're doing it effectively. So non-judgmentally means just the facts. That car is red. That coworker said this. You're focusing on the facts and not judging it, not saying that car is red and I hate red, so I don't like that car. You're not saying that coworker said this and I think that's stupid. You're just focusing on the physical things, the verbal things, just the facts. I like to think of this as like those old crime show TVs where the investigator goes in and says something, I want just the facts, just the facts. What does one mindfully mean? This is kind of building again on the how skills, or the what skills. It's part of that as well, but you're focusing on one thing. You're not multitasking, as I said before. And you're doing it effectively. You are going to focus on what works for you. You are going to look at different things you try and say, hey, this worked. This didn't work. This helped me be more mindful. This helped me be more present in this moment. This other way didn't help me. And then after you notice that, after you identify what works, the harder part is then to do what works. Don't keep doing something that's not working for you. Try to move on and do what is going to work for you. And a little bit later, I'll get into some more practical examples of these from my viewpoint as a programmer. So the last component of DBT is the wise mind. This one is a bit harder to wrap your mind around, or at least it was for me. Took me a bit to kind of catch on. So basically thinking you have two different sides. You have your rational, your reasonable, your intellectual mind, and then you have your emotional mind. How do you feel? Again, this kind of gets into the facts. This gets into the feelings. Another way to look at it is the doing mind versus the being mind. Doing mind would be thinking, here's my action plan. Here are the tasks I'm going to do. I'm going to do them. The being mind is more focusing in that moment, less on what you're going to do down the line and say, okay, let's maybe do this now. So one of the ways I think that's super helpful is to use a Venn diagram and look at reasonable mind, emotion mind, and then where they overlap to make wise mind. So reasonable mind is often thought of as cool, while emotion mind is hot. As I kind of got at, the reasonable mind is rational, whereas your emotion mind can be mood dependent. Again, the reasonable mind is task focused, whereas the emotion mind is emotion focused, as the line says. When in reasonable mind, you're ruled by facts, reason, logic, and pragmatics. Values and feelings are not important. When you're in emotional mind, you're ruled by your moods, feelings, and urges to do or say things. On the opposite end, facts, reason, and logic are not important. So what wise mind is about finding that balance between them. One of the things you'll often hear is it's about finding the wisdom within each person. So you're going to say there are benefits of both reason and emotion. You need reason, you need to focus on tasks to get things done. But maybe a task makes you feel uncomfortable, so you're going to look at that and think deeper. Okay, why is this task making me uncomfortable? It's bringing your left brain and your right brain together and finding that middle path. Another way to put it is it's about balancing, achieving, and experiencing. One thing I found in my experiences doing research, listening to this, is they can get very academic. And as you might know, academia can go many different ways. There are many, sometimes conflicting, different terminology. So a lot of this is just the same, different ways of saying the same thing. So there are lots and lots of ways to practice mindfulness. I'm going to go through a few of them. These I've actually pulled from a help guide that Harvard put together with benefits of mindfulness. So a good place to start is with just a basic mindfulness meditation. You're going to sit quietly, focus on a natural breathing, a word, or maybe a mantra that you repeat silently. You're going to allow your thoughts to come and go without judgment and return your focus on your breath or your mantra. So again, thinking of that Teflon mind. Maybe you're thinking, I have to do X later. Let that come and go. You're not going to say, well, I'm mad I have to do this because. You're just going to identify, yep, I need to do that, and let it go. Another way to practice mindfulness is to focus on your bodily sensations. Think about subtle things even. As you practice mindfulness more and more, you'll notice you'll get more and more in depth and noticing little things, such as an itch or a tingling. Maybe all of a sudden you start to notice, little habits you have, tapping your foot, tapping your toes. And so mindfulness, you're going to sit and notice these things. Another way to do this is to focus on each part of your body in succession. So we move from head to toe. Think about often relaxing your scalp, or what are you feeling on your scalp? Focus then maybe on your shoulders. Do you have tension in your shoulders? Down into your arms, your wrists, your hands. Are your fists clenched? And just noticing that, just noticing, hey, I seem to be really tense in my shoulders right now. Hey, I have my fist clenched. You're not going to judge. You're not going to go beyond noticing those things. Another method of practicing mindfulness is looking at the sensory. So notice sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches around you. And then name those. So it might be you see a red car, you hear the traffic, you hear horns honking, you smell car exhaust. Hopefully you're not tasting these things. It probably would not be pleasant. And then touch. And again, as you might notice, it's without judgment, non-judgmentally. You're going to notice them, name them, and move on. You can also notice your emotions and allow those to be present without judgment. So you might notice that a coworker says something to you, and all of a sudden, I'm angry. This makes me angry. You're going to just notice that, not judge it. You're not going to say, oh, well, why do you feel angry? You always get angry with yourself when a coworker says something like this. You're not going to go there. You're just going to say to yourself, I'm angry right now because my coworker said this. You can practice a steady and relaxed naming of emotions. I kind of got into that as anger. I'm feeling anger. And you can maybe let that go, just sit in a while, see how your emotions change over time. And then a different part of that is accepting the presence of emotions. Again, you're hearing this over and over, but without judgment, that Teflon mind. You're going to say, I'm feeling sad right now. And like I said earlier, there are many, 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 many more ways to practice mindfulness. So now let's actually get a little into mindful programming. This is something that maybe you haven't thought of, but not surprisingly, others have thought about it. There's lots of articles online that you can find and resource, and it's something I've been trying to practice more and more. So then throughout my experiences, it's taken me a while. It's taken me a long way to get here. I am not always successful in mindful programming. I was focusing on making this presentation, running through it earlier this week, and thought about how last week I actually hadn't been practicing any mindfulness with my programming. And I looked at that and noticed that I had a lot of distractions, quite a bit of frustration, and I wasn't as productive. So mindful programming is actually super helpful for me, but not easy. So how do I go about that? What I do is before I begin on anything, any task, I focus on centering myself. There are several ways you can do this. You can focus on breathing, just noticing your natural breath. Breathe in and breathe out without trying to change it. Maybe then you're focusing on breathing for a count. In for a count 5, out for a count 3, something like that. You could maybe do a meditation, or you could do something like grounding, which can be more physical. So thinking, I'm sitting in this chair right now. I can feel the back of the chair against my back. It has a little bit of bounce when I motion with my hands. You're focusing on what's around you and grounding. So again, like I said, it's hard to do this. It takes practice, and some of these may work for you. Some of them may work sometimes and not other times. So it's about having that flexibility, and again, identifying what works, what is effective for you, and then doing what is effective for you. So then after I've kind of centered myself, I start looking at things around me, observing. What am I coming to the task with? Maybe I'm tired. I didn't sleep well last night. I only got 4 hours of sleep. So I'm tired right now. How does the task make you feel? Maybe a task makes you feel annoyed. Maybe a task makes you feel excited. Another big one is as you get in and start looking, or maybe you have already before you get to this task, is how does the existing code make you feel? Does it make you cringe? Do you want to take it all and throw it out the window? Does it make you want to hit your computer keyboard and smash it? Or are you excited? Do you like the code? Do you think it's beautiful code and you can't wait to get in and work on it? And again, what thoughts come to mind as you're looking at this? Maybe you look at the code and think, oh, this is really hard. I'm going to have to change this and this and this before I can even start on my task. It's going to take me forever to get going on this. And then you're going to describe more specifically your observations. So maybe what specifically about the task made you anxious? Maybe it's a very specific requirement that makes you feel anxious. Or maybe there's a requirement that makes you annoyed. I kind of got into this now a little bit, jumped ahead, but the code made me cringe. This function is huge and made me feel overwhelmed. As you're trying to reverse engineer something and you know that you don't have the original programmer, the original coder available as a resource, that can often be very daunting and overwhelming. So you're going to describe that and describe it with more specifics. What exactly about it makes you feel overwhelmed? Maybe it's a specific function, maybe it's a specific class, maybe it's a whole idea of functionality. Another thing you might notice, and this is something that actually annoys me a lot, is are you using a lot of duplicate code where things could be pulled out and you're thinking, oh, why is all there this duplicate code? Maybe it does something a little bit different in one place, a little bit different in another. This is going to be really hard to deal with. And then kind of building on that, moving beyond into more doing. As you notice, a lot of that describing might have been more emotion mind. Now you're going to get into more of the being mind. So describe what exactly is necessary. What do you have to do? What are the requirements of the project? What are the tasks? Maybe you can break it down into steps more and describe those. So finally, then we kind of get into participate. And for me, a huge part of participating, allowing myself to participate fully, to be one mindful, focus on just the programming, what I'm doing, is to eliminate distractions. It's amazing once you start getting in and programming how often you are distracted. And that's something, is you start by just noticing. Notice how often, oh, there's an alert for a new email that popped up. Now I have to go check that. Oh, there's a Slack message from this mid-camp. Like Dwayne posted this really cool video that I want to go look at right now. Just start noticing these distractions and then move on to closing them. Eliminate the distractions. This might be hard depending on where you're at and the circumstances. I am very lucky in that I have a manager and, for the most part, coworkers who understand that a huge part of being able to program is focus, not having distractions, not having interruptions. So when I do that though, I let others know I'm going head down and tell them not to disturb me. A big part then kind of, I'll get into this a little bit later, but when you do that, when you go head down, actually close everything out. Do not keep it open and just say that and then, oh, well, sometimes I respond. I had a meeting with my manager actually just Monday, and she brought that up with our group, our team, saying, hey, sometimes Doug's going to go heads down. Sometimes Evgeny's going to go head down, although they usually respond and they shouldn't. So don't get in that habit of responding when you say you're going to go head down. Go head down fully and let others know that you're going head down so that maybe they can take notes, emails to prep to you later, or they know that you're not just slacking off watching cool videos from Dwayne. Going in even deeper to participate and getting into what you're doing. Focus on one step at a time. I actually think of that graph where you're like doing all these tasks, original tasks, and then you're like, oh, maybe I can automate this. And you spend all this time automating, all this time passes, and you're no further on your task at hand. So focus on just that one task. Maybe this might be something as small as, hey, I'm noticing I have a user object and there are a ton of places where they're appending user first name dot user last name, or maybe user dot first name dot user last name dot user title. They're doing this all over the place. And what if all of a sudden they don't want to show the title in the full name? We want this full name consistent everywhere. Let's create a helper function for this. And you're going to go head down. This is a pretty simple example, but it can show how effective it is. Right now, I need to create a helper function to get a full username. Maybe it's as small, a little bit bigger, and it involves creating a new class with a constructor. So once you've identified those tasks and those steps, go into them one by one and focus on it fully. Do just that task. Do that task one mindfully. So as I hinted at this, find out what's effective. What works for you? One of the big things for me is I am lucky enough to have an actual office with a door. And so I close the door. And I found that, especially at first, I have to also put up a do not disturb sign, or I will get people that'll come knock or just open and say, hey, can I interrupt you? And then you're like, well, you just did interrupt me. So for me, it was a matter of closing my door and putting up a do not disturb sign. And again, with doing that, actually adhere to that. Don't maybe sometimes do it and maybe sometimes not. Oh, there's this exception, even though I had this up, I'll help you for a little bit, because then people start to know, well, sometimes he does help. and it starts to defeat the purpose. Maybe this means going to a different physical location to focus. Maybe you go into a room with no windows. You can solid wood door, close that door and be in just that room with no other distractions. Maybe that works for you. Kind of along the same lines, maybe you rearrange your monitors and what is in each monitor so that you can't see out a glass wall of your office or you can't see people walking by. This is something that I've found is very huge for me. I'm easily distracted. I'll see someone go by, I'll look corner of my eye, I'll look. So I've taken the time to kind of move my monitors into more of a corner. And when I have my IDE open, my code editor, I do it in a middle monitor so that I am facing corner and my window looking out into the hallway is over here. So as I'm coding, as I'm in the code, I can't see people going by. I can't see someone that goes by and makes a funny face at me. I'm going to stay focused on my code. Getting into wise mind and how this can be used. You're going to balance your gut reactions or your emotions and your logic. Maybe you say, oh, this class is like 2,000 lines. This is way, way, way too big. I want to refactor this. That's your gut emotion. That's your gut reaction. It makes you cringe. It makes you unhappy. You want to refactor it. However, not everything in that class applies to what you have to do. Not everything in that class affects or is affected by your task. And the project timeline may not allow for complete refactoring. So those are kind of the realities. That's the logic. Not everything in the class applies to this task. And the project timeline isn't going to allow for me to refactor the whole class. So what can you do? You want to refactor that. You really, really want to refactor that class. Well, maybe there are pieces in that class that are a part of your task or do affect your task or will be affected by your task. And you're able to break them down into small enough pieces where, okay, I can break out this little piece of functionality into maybe its own helper function, maybe create a service, breaking those out in little pieces, and you're not refactoring the whole class. You're not doing what you initially want to do gut-wise, but you're making it better. You're balancing out your emotions and the logic. And finally, as I'm done with the day, this is something that's very, very easy to forget, but I find super important. Maybe even more importantly now as we're going into working from home and might be here longer than we expected, is ending the day with a mindful practice. This helps me close out my mind, shift from work mode into home mode. So with that in mind, it looks like we do have some time. I am going to do a very short mindfulness exercise. I'll probably condense it a little bit here just for time's sake. This is actually probably my favorite. So I invite you to sit in a comfortable position. Maybe your feet are flat on the floor, your arms and legs uncrossed, and your hands resting in your lap. You can let your eyes close gently or fix them on a point in front of you. Now notice your breath. Don't try to change it. Don't try to speed it up or slow it down. Just notice. Hear your breath. Hear your chest or feel your chest rising as you breathe in and out. Imagine you are standing or sitting by a bank of a gently flowing stream. Watch the water flow. Feel the ground beneath you. Hear the water flowing by. And now imagine that there are leaves on the stream. The leaves are all different shapes, sizes, and colors. For now, just notice them. Just watch them flow by. Start to become aware of your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Each time you notice a thought, feeling, or sensation, imagine taking it and placing it on the leaf and letting it float down the stream. Do this regardless of whether the thoughts, feelings, or sensations are positive or negative, pleasurable or painful. Even if they are the most wonderful thoughts, place them on the leaf and let them float by. Your thoughts may slow down, stop completely, and start up again. Notice this. The stream stays at its own pace. It does not speed up or slow down in its flow. However, you can take these thoughts as they come and go and put them on the leaves and let them be and flow how they will. Maybe a leaf gets stuck or won't go away. This thought is nagging at you. Let it hang around for a little while. While you're doing this, just observe. There's no need to force the leaf downstream. Maybe you get caught up again. Here's a feeling of boredom. Here's a feeling of impatience. Notice them, and then place those words on a leaf and let them float on down the stream. It's normal and natural to lose track in this, and it will keep happening. When you notice yourself losing track, getting distracted, just bring yourself back to watching the leaves float down the stream. Finally, allow the image of the stream to dissolve. Slowly bring your attention back to the room you are in, the chair you are sitting on. Gently open your eyes and notice what you can see. Notice what you can hear. Push your feet into the floor and have a stretch. Notice yourself stretching. Welcome back. So with that, I'll leave it there, which actually might be a good transition now into Avi. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, let's have a little bit of time at the end if we do, and go there unless anyone has a thought or a question that they would like to get out now. Great, and I will be posting these slides up later. I realized I didn't make a sources and resources slide, so I'll get that added and share it on the meetup group. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Avi.
Cool. Thanks, Doug. I feel much calmer now.
Nice.
I was about ready to start snoring, so it's a good thing I had my mic off.
Oh, Bob.
I know.
Sometimes that happens, and that's okay.
Me too. And then Dwayne sent me a video, and I had to watch.
Hey, cool. Okay, I'm gonna take a sec to figure out how to do this. I've never done this talk remotely before, and I submitted it to a couple camps, so I wanted to test it out here. I'm getting my bearings with my new room too, so okay, I think this is good. Anyway, I'm gonna sit first. Hey, welcome. This is Energizing the Seated. So this is a really interesting segue. I did this talk originally with JD after his his mental illness, mental health talk. And I think this Doug's talk is also a really, really interesting pairing. Doug's talking a lot about mental health and being able to be calm and be aware of your mind while you're working, and a lot of what I'm talking about is being aware of your body while you're working, and that's what this talk is about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to be aware of your space, and then I'm going to get into some exercises that you can do. So I encourage you. I started doing this talk, when we were all sitting in conference rooms, and I found, especially when I'm sitting in a conference room, that I'm often in a kind of chair that's not super comfy, or I'm smushed between people. And so one of the first things I wanted to encourage people to do when I started this talk is to make yourself comfortable. If you are sitting in a place that you don't really want to be, then change that up. If you're sitting in front of your screen and your chair is not super comfortable, like, just put your headphones on and walk around, or lay down on the couch, or do whatever you want to do. It's important when we are working, whether that's in an office or at home, to be comfortable and be aware of our body, and make sure that our body is in a place that's conducive to our mind doing work. So yeah, like I said, for those of us who are working now, it's it's our job to be in front of a screen, with the exception of like some designers or PMs or sales folks who are doing pitches or whatever, which they're not really going out and traveling anymore. It's our job to be in front of a screen for 40 hours a week. And so that's a thing that our bodies are not particularly adapted to. So there were these things going around a while ago saying sitting is the new smoking, and so sitting is slowly eating away at us. And now more than ever, sorry, I'm just messing with my windows. Now more than ever, it's really important to be aware of chat windows. Now more than ever, it's more important to be aware of our body and be aware of what work is doing to us. If you're not taking care of your body while you're working, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna slowly eat away at your body, in your life outside of work and your work. It's gonna affect everything. So yeah, if you can't fix your space, if you can't fix what's broken, you'll go insane. So this is repetitive stress injuries. This is the 3 o'clock kind of snooze, where you're sitting at your desk and you've had lunch and your body just kind of goes into its like nap time mode. Your body has a lot of reactions to your space, to your surroundings, to your rhythms, that are sometimes counter to the work that we do. So it's really important to be aware of those, facilitate them when that needs be, and try and fight them when that's the thing you want to do. So the goal here is to just make our work not mediocre. Like I said, you're doing your work for 40 plus hours a week, so we want it to be a thing that is productive for our body and to our mind. Side note, Phineas Jones, Chicago artist, is making a Morton Joe face mask. You can find that on one of the shopping things. Look up Phineas Chicago if you want a sweet Morton Joe face mask. So I've been standing at standing desks for 4 or 5 years now. and I really recommend it. For me, it's the way that my body is the most productive throughout the day. So I sat at a desk for 10 years or more, and then we had the opportunity to set up a new office space when I was working for the University of Chicago. And that was a good time, and we were able to spend some money and get some cool fancy desks and these fancy new chairs, and they were sitting and standing and everything was cool. And so it was a really neat time. I was able to experiment with a lot of different ways of working. And after 6 months or so, I found that I was able to stand for a good chunk of the day. I moved to an office, and that all changed. And this was my setup for a while there. I had an iMac box and some books and a hard drive box and an iPad box and the stand I scrounged from an office, and a whole bunch of stuff. And I was able to make a really solidly ergonomic 2-monitor setup while standing. Nothing ever fell. Nothing, didn't have any problems except the looks that I got from folks walking by. And it was a really great conversation piece. Not the most mindful setup, being like on a corner and the new guy and having a funky desk, but it worked for me. And this was my setup in my home office for a long time. I had a IKEA desk that has a little hand crank. Again, I kind of perched my monitors up on a few different things. There's a whole kind of separate talk to do about ergonomics, and that's really that's something different. The biggest pieces though are making sure when you're working, you want your elbow to be kind of at a good 90-degree angle, but you don't want to be looking down. So that's the reason that perching your monitors up is really important. If you're using a laptop, especially if your monitor is at the same level as your hands, you're going to be looking down a lot, and that's going to put a lot of stress on your neck here. So you want to make sure that you're looking kind of even or just down instead of cocking your neck. That's going to be really important to keeping a good posture while you're working. So there was a whole bunch of talk one day for a while when standing desks were making their run about why standing might not be super for you, and the truth behind standing desks, and standing doing more harm than good. These studies are all interesting, and I think it's important to talk about the benefits and the negatives of any situation. But for me, standing was really important. Like I said, it's something that you have to work into. It took me a solid 6 months to be able to stand for a full work day. So I was slowly working up to that. I would stand in the morning and then sit in the afternoon, or I'd stand for meetings and sit for working, or opposite. And so it's something that you really have to work on. Standing the whole day may never be for you, but just trying to adjust your position throughout the day is a really big part of being able to be physically present for your job. It ties, like I said, very well into the mindfulness idea. So again, we got to move. So a couple of ways of creating a movement-rich environment that I've found. These are techniques that you can use to help yourself, to help your body remind you to get up and move. It's recommended that your body always wants to be moving. You've probably found that if you're if you get into the zone, if you get into this focus that Doug is talking about, you can be there for a really long time, and that can end up having some really detrimental effects. If you get sitting at your screen for an hour or 2 or 3, your eyes start getting heavy, they get dry, your brain doesn't keep going. So you really need to give your body a break, and make sure you're retaining your focus, but also retaining your body's ability to think. So water is really good. You know, it's really important to drink water throughout the day. It's fine having coffee or your whatever your caffeine of choice in the morning is. But especially in the afternoon, drinking water keeps you hydrated, and that keeps everything moving. It also makes you have to go to the bathroom. So just the act of standing up to go to the bathroom can be a really good break in our day. And the more you drink, the more you have to pee. So it works out. This is a little thing called a fidget bar. They're different kind of things that you can put underneath your desk. You can do anything, you know, you can buy one of these fancy gadgets. You can put a ball, you can put a, you know, anything under your desk that you can kind of move around with your feet. They're those rocker things. They all help us, you know, create movement while we're, you know, while our hands and our eyes are fixed. This is a Pomodoro timer. This is a really popular kind of very similar to a mindfulness technique, I think, where it's a way to kind of remind yourself to take a break. So, you know, it's the idea is you take a short break every 25 minutes and then a longer break every 2 hours. Again, keeping the motion, keeping your body, you know, in a rhythm of motion. So yeah, like I said, no matter how you move, standing is part of it. You know, in order to move, whether you're sitting or standing, or whether you're always going to be standing up and getting moving. So the first thing I want to do to help us is learn how to stand. So I'm going to stand up. I'm going to take a couple steps back. Hopefully you can see me here. I'll encourage you to do whatever works for you in your space right now. If you can stand up and follow along with me, that is super. You don't have to turn on your video. I'll believe you. But I encourage you to try and follow along and do some of these exercises. So when we stand, we're gonna have our head and back in a neutral position. So you don't wanna be slumped over, you don't wanna be hanging around. You just wanna have your head up and your spine neutral. Squeezing your shoulders back, kind of squeezing your shoulder blades towards each other to your back. It helps you maintain your posture. Yeah, so you want to have your shoulders back. That'll help you stand up straight. You want to push your rib cage down. So you don't want to be breathing heavy and have your rib cage up like this, pushed out. You want it down and kind of tucked. And when you breathe, you want to engage your abs. So you want to make sure just as much as you're keeping your shoulders back, you're engaging your back. You want to engage your front too, to make sure that your body is supported both from the front and the back. As you're standing, you can, yeah, so you want to flex your butt too. Just kind of, you know, you don't have to do too much, but just make sure that you're engaging all the way down. You want to externally rotate your quads. So that's turning your legs out just a little bit. So you want to make sure that helps you keep all the muscles engaged throughout all the way down. So just kind of take your knees and turn them out just a little bit. That helps. And then finally, you want to keep your feet straight and level on the ground. Yeah, sorry, slide issues there. So again, head, neck, shoulders, rib cage, abs, butt, glutes, or yeah, quads, feet. You want to make sure you're engaging all the way in order to make sure you're standing well. So as we're standing, you can do this exercise sitting or standing. We're standing right now. If you were in a conference, you wouldn't be able to lay down, but if you can, feel free to lay down on your back, put your knees up, and go through this exercise with me too. So we're going to talk about breathing from your diaphragm. If you've ever played a wind instrument, you've done these exercises already. So you're not breathing from your lungs and from your rib cage. You're breathing from the bottom of your belly, and that helps get your breath fuller and more aligned. This is again, just like Doug's exercise, his mindfulness exercise. As you're breathing, as you're taking breaths, if you intentionally take a deep breath, you can feel it come from lower in your belly than higher up, and that means you're getting those deep breaths that are really important. So you can put your hand on your belly, whether you're sitting or standing. Make sure you've got your posture good, and just take a couple breaths. So breathe in through your nose, into your belly, and then out through your mouth. And so just the act of breathing can calm both our body and our mind, and help us kind of come back to the space that we're in and be present physically and mentally. So taking a couple more breaths. So you can feel that engaging all of your core, your back, and the muscles that we talked about engaging before. Okay, so now we're going to do a couple exercises, and these are things that you can do anywhere you are. If you're at home, if you're at an office, these are things that you can do in little chunks or all together to help keep your body moving throughout the day. So first, we're going to move our neck. So we're going to roll side and then down and then up and then side. You don't want to go back too far. Sometimes that can strain your neck. If you're comfortable with it, go in circles, but just roll your neck. Again, just taking your eyes off the screen and moving back and forth. So next we're going to move our shoulders. And so this, you can just make circles with your shoulders. Your shoulders get really tight as you're working on the keyboard. And so moving your shoulders just up and then back. This helps work out your shoulders, your back. It helps improve circulation to your hands and gets all that moving. So as you're doing these, you can pick a number, 3, 5, 9, 7, odd numbers are good. Pick any number and just do that number one way and then the other, and it helps keep things even. Next, we're gonna do our elbows. Put my phone down for this one. So your elbows can get, whether you're standing or sitting, you often have kind of funky elbow posture. You're often like leaning on the desk. So you got to work those out. So this exercise, pretend like you've got a pair of big glasses on that you get like at a fun house or one of those like photo shoots, and you're just going to take those glasses off. So glasses, take them off. Take the glasses off. So just keep moving, move your elbows around. And then you're going to reverse and put those glasses on. So this is a really good exercise just to keep that blood moving in your arms. Next up, we're going to do our wrists. And so again, this is an important part of our keyboard and mousing. Just get your wrists moving, reverse. Sometimes you might have, I know in like the 90s, these things were really popular, the little wrist ball things that like have a little gyroscope in there. We have one somewhere every once in a while. I try it out, it's super cool. But just getting these muscles moving that are really important and that you're using all day, and keeping, sometimes in a totally static position. It's really important to keep those activated. Next up, we're we're gonna work on our hips. So you're gonna take your thumbs and push them into your pelvis right here. So right kind of in the nook in your pelvis, and you're gonna just bend at the hips. You wanna keep your back straight, but you just wanna hinge only at your hips. This hip hinge is really good for kind of getting your lower back stretched out, and especially if you're sitting, but if you're standing too, there's a lot of tension in your lower back, and you want to work that out. It stretches your quads to your hamstrings. Next up, we're going to work our ankles. So I'm going to stand up, but just some circles with our ankles. Got low ceilings in our new basement, so I can just hold on the ceiling. So just make some circles, and then the other way. Your ankles, if you're sitting, may not be moving at all, and if you're standing, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure here. So you gotta keep them moving. I've been having some trouble with my feet lately, so it's I've not been stretching as much as I should, but this is it's good to take a little time. So, and the next thing we're going to do is called ankle clearing. I'm going to turn the screen down a little bit. So here, what you want to do, so we're gonna cross our legs, cross our feet, and then just bend a little bit. So what you're doing is with your knee, you're clearing your ankle. So you're going forward. You want to start with your knee right above your ankle, and then you're gonna bend your knees and move forward. You don't want them crossed. You want, I can't stand up straight. You want to go foot heel to toe, and then just bend. And so that can help. That's going to help stretch out your legs, stretch out your knees, and just kind of move that knee forward above your toes, not too far, and then switch. Just get the knee in front of your toes. Okay, so each of those exercises you can do on their own, or you can do them all together for a nice little office stretch. They don't require anything more than just standing up and getting moving. So one more thing you can do in the office, you can do this with a chair, or you can do this at your desk, is squats. Squats are a really good way to kind of move your whole body. So like I said, you can use a chair, or you can use your desk, or really anything you have around. I'm grabbing a folding chair, and I'm gonna demo. So when you do the squat, you wanna have your heels flat on the ground, your toes forward. You wanna keep your knees out and your back flat. You're gonna hinge your hips back. So don't bend with your knees, but hinge your hips back. Tighten in your trunk, keep supported from both sides like we were talking about before, and then lower your hips. So you can do this onto a chair, you can do it holding onto a chair, but you wanna make sure that your knees stay above your ankles pretty close, so that you're not like breaking the bottom of your form. So you're gonna squat, and you're just gonna sit down onto the bony part of your butt and just bring that down as low as you can go, and then stand up. So just hinging at your hips, bringing it down, feeling the stretch, and then standing. And again, you don't need much space for this. You don't need any equipment. It's something that you can do in pretty much any space, just to try and keep things moving. One other exercise that you can do with a chair or your desk is this overhead stretch. So again, whether you're sitting or standing, there's going to be a lot of tension in your back and in your arms. And so this can work out both. So you're going to put your hands on whatever surface you're working with, and you're just going to slowly kind of step back and hinge at the hips again. Remember, all of this is hinging at the hips, so you're not doing funky stuff with your back. You just want to hinge at the hips. This is going to stretch your arms. It's going to stretch your quads or your hamstrings. It's going to stretch out your back. You can kind of let your head hang and just push into it, and stand up and push into it again. So yeah, yeah, that's something else that we can do. So these are all great exercises. I hope you enjoyed and could take some things away. I'll post a link to the slides in Meetup. The information from this talk came from my trainer, Jason, at Blue City Strength. I worked with him for 2 years or so. He's down in Hyde Park here, and he helped me develop some of the head to toe exercise. He didn't help me develop it. It was his, and I took it from him with permission. The other stuff was from this book, Deskbound by Kelly Starrett. He did a really great talk. It was like an MIT, the YouTube link is here. And the whole thing, that was kind of what I based this talk on. Anyway, that is me. As Dwayne said, I do mid-camp. I'm on the event organizers working group for Drupal. And I'm hopefully to be doing Drupal at a cool place in Chicago soon. I'm most places. I'm Froboy, AJ Schwab on Twitter, and froboy.org is my website. Just a disclaimer, I am not a professional trainer. These are all things that I do as a web developer, and I pass them on to you as a coworker. Please don't hurt yourself. That's it for me. So I guess we've got a few minutes now. Yeah, we can do questions for either Doug or I, if folks have any.
Thanks, Avi. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks. That was really awesome, both of y'all. I agree with Bob on his last comment in the comments.
What comment was that? What did I say? I don't remember.
The older you are, the more you have to pee.
Oh God, yes.
See, but it's you know, it's important.
People
Zoom
have to
needs-
pee.
Zoom needs like an applause button that plays like an applause track to everybody.
I'm sure you can write a script for that.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. On the list, Aaron.
Well, I just learned another fun thing. I use Google Slides, and there's a like